In the third video of this series, we got a glimpse of the role of the pancreas and the liver as far as digestion is concerned. These two accessory organs play a much greater role in the body than just those things that were mentioned in the last video. And I'd like to address those with you now. And we'll just review the structures that we have. The stomach, the gallbladder, this is the duodenum, pancreas I've already labeled. The liver has got actually 6 very important functions in the body. And I'll list them for you here. The one that we mentioned already is the production of bile. Bile is a salty green liquid. It's an emulsifier of lipids. Emulsification, remember, is breaking them up into small droplets. Important to note where the green comes from. The green is a result of 2 different proteins in the bile. One is called bilirubin, and the other one is biliverdin. These 2 proteins are actually waste products. They're waste products from the destruction of red blood cells. So if we say that this is function number 1 of the liver, this is function number 2. Red blood cells don't last forever in the body. They have a lifespan of about 120 days. As they carry oxygen and carbon dioxide around the body, they get physically worn out. The proteins slowly denature, and hemoglobin isn't as effective at carrying these substances as it once was, and the cells just wear out and they die. When they're dead, though, your body has to get rid of them, and that's one of the roles of the liver. The hemoglobin, abbreviation HB, hemoglobin is a protein. The protein of hemoglobin is made out of 4 different proteins. Actually 4 proteins, 2 pairs of 2 proteins. These proteins are denatured. That's why hemoglobin isn't as effective as it once was. The other components of hemoglobin, like iron can be reused by the body. It gets reabsorbed and reused. But these proteins, they're denatured. They can't be fixed. These proteins, 2 of each kind, are bilirubin and biliverdin. And they produce a green hue to the bile. So liver has 6 functions: produce bile, destruction of red blood cells, and these 2 are linked together, obviously. A third one I can put over here is it stores glycogen. Glycogen is a polysaccharide. It's a polymer of glucose. Much like starch is a polymer of glucose, but starch is the polymer of glucose that's made in plant tissues. Animal tissues store glucose in the form of glycogen, and that gets stored in the liver. And the reason it's important to recognize the storage of glucose in some form in the body is you have to maintain a certain blood sugar level. Your blood sugar goes up after you eat because you eat sweet things, you eat sugars, the carbohydrates get broken down into glucose, gets absorbed. But as you're working through the day and as you're exercising, conducting all sorts of activities, that glucose level goes down. And it goes down, but it can't go down very far. As it drops, the glycogen actually is converted back into the glucose, and it gets released into the blood to maintain that blood sugar level. The function of maintaining blood sugar level is actually one of the functions of the pancreas. So we'll get to that in more detail in a couple of minutes. So we have three functions for the liver now. Bile, destruction of red blood cells, stores glycogen. I've got room to put a fourth one here. It makes urea. Urea is a nitrogen waste. Our cells produce nitrogen as a waste product, in the form of ammonia actually, and it originates from amino acids. So as we use up amino acids, we wind up with the nitrogen as a waste product. It's converted into ammonia. Ammonia enters the blood from the cells. It gets transported around in the blood, but ammonia is really quite toxic, and your body can't survive high levels of ammonia. So what happens when the blood passes through the liver, the ammonia which is in blood, NH3, gets converted to urea. Urea is a much less toxic nitrogen-containing waste. Urea is what your kidneys excrete in urine. So there's the link between urea and urine. So now we've got our four functions of the liver. A fifth function, I'm looking for space to write, a fifth function is it detoxifies blood. So sometimes there's waste products in blood and alcohol in blood which has to be removed, and the liver has the role of detoxifying the blood, taking those things out of the blood. And the sixth one, I'll put it, the sixth and final function that we'll consider here, is it actually makes globulins. Globulins are blood proteins. An example of a blood protein that it makes is a protein called albumin. Albumin is the same protein that's in egg white. Albumin is an extremely important blood protein because what it does, it maintains an osmotic pressure when blood is passing through capillaries. And that's a topic that comes up when we'll deal with the circulatory system. So just to review, the liver, it's an accessory organ to the digestive system because it does make bile, which gets stored in the gallbladder. That's this one here. But in addition to doing that, it destroys red blood cells. That contributes the green color to the bile. It stores the glycogen, which helps you maintain your blood sugar levels. It makes urea, which you have to get rid of. It detoxifies blood, and it makes blood proteins. The pancreas has got a whole different set of functions, and we'll look at those next. The pancreas, the other accessory organ to the digestive system, has got a whole other set of functions. And we'll look at that. The one function that we've considered in the digestive system is the secretion of pancreatic juice. And you'll remember that pancreatic juice is a fairly complex liquid. It contains 6 substances, 4 enzymes, water, and bicarbonate ions. That's only one of its roles. Pancreatic juice travels through the pancreatic duct into the duodenum. The other one is that it secretes hormones. Important to recognize these two different secretion methods. Pancreatic juice is secreted through tubes, pancreatic ducts, into the duodenum. This is an exocrine function. Hormones don't get put in little tubes to travel through the body. They go directly into the blood. This is an endocrine function. So oftentimes it's been said that the pancreas is both an exocrine and an endocrine gland. To understand the secretion of hormones, understand this topic, we have to look a little bit more closely at the structure of the pancreas. It has different clusters of cells in it. These cells are called the islets of Langerhans. Or we just refer to them as islet cells. Little islands, little clusters of cells within the tissues that make the pancreatic juice. But they're little clusters of cells. Langerhans is the fellow that discovered them. They're named after him, so we always have a capital L here. These islet cells are of two different kinds. There's some that are called alpha cells, and there's some that are called beta cells. They secrete different types of hormones. The alpha cells secrete glucagon. The beta cells secrete insulin. These two hormones do the opposite of each other. They are both involved in regulating blood sugar levels. Glucagon is the hormone that promotes the release of glucose from the liver, from glycogen storage in the liver. So this one will increase blood sugar level. Insulin does the opposite. Insulin promotes the storage in the liver of the glucose in the form of glycogen. There's a lot of GL words here. Let me put down glucose, glycogen, glucagon. It's important to keep them straight. This is the sugar, this is the storage form of the sugar, and this is the hormone that breaks this into this, promotes this breakdown of glycogen into glucose. As you eat a meal, your blood sugar level starts to increase because your meal contains starches. The starches get broken down into sugars. The sugars are absorbed and you wind up elevating your blood sugar levels. As it gets to a threshold level, insulin is secreted and insulin promotes that storage into the form of glycogen in the liver. In between meals though, as you're conducting your daily activities, you're using up your blood sugars. And as you use up your blood sugars, the level is going down, the body's sensitive to that, and these islet cells, the alpha cells in the pancreas will release glucagon, and that'll promote the release of sugar from the liver, from being stored in the liver. So your blood sugar levels maintained at a fairly level, fairly even level. One final note before we leave the topic of the pancreas and the liver, and I'd like to draw your attention specifically to insulin. Insulin is a hormone that is involved in the regulation of blood sugars. What it does specifically is it allows cells to use glucose, to absorb glucose so they can use it. All cells in your body have to be able to get glucose. Glucose is used for carbohydrate metabolism. We make ATP with it. There's our energy source. The liver cells specifically get the glucose converted into glycogen. Liver promotes this process because it allows those cells to get the glucose. People who don't have sufficient levels of insulin are diabetic. Diabetes is a condition where the blood sugar level is higher than it's supposed to be, simply because they can't store excess glucose in the liver, and they can't get the glucose into their cells so that they can generate energy. Diabetes, if untreated with the high levels of sugar in the blood, diabetes means that a person's going to be having larger urine flows, because the urine will contain the glucose to try and flush the extra glucose out of the body. In our next video, we'll consider what goes on in the digestive system further down than the duodenum. These things relate more to the duodenum, but after the duodenum, the other parts of the small intestine, the jejunum and the ileum, where things get absorbed and so on, that's the next topic. Thanks very much.